Let's go ahead and organize our outliner here. That looks fine. What do we got? Spacer low. Where's our spacer high? Blade low. Blade high. So this is not really important for anything other than just like being able to kind of visually check to make sure that everything is good to go there. Take a quick glance, one more final glance here at the UVs. All that stuff looks pretty good. We've got our areas that are less visible, that are smaller. We've got the areas that are identical laterally stacked. And so with all of that, we get a textile density. We'll just use our blade here as kind of like the test. So 164. And I might do a little pass where I just unify everything and give everything its own textile density, and then we can kind of see. In fact, I could just do that right now. So we're going from 164 to, and let me just do a layout here. Everything is, and things are still being shrunken here, but you can see these are no longer stacked. So let's go ahead and see what it says. So it's from 164 to 123. So there's a significant savings there. And if I go to layout and I set this to preserve 3D ratios, which will make these the same size, what we're going to see here is 120. So we're going from 164 textiles per unit to 120 by not doing that stuff. So it might have seemed like a little bit of a hassle, but it's actually really a significant increase. And I can do a simple test in Painter, I think, that'll demonstrate this a little bit more clearly in terms of like what the actual impact on your texture clarity and on the final asset is by doing these kinds of optimizations. So we'll stand by for that. But for now, what I want to do is we'll just freeze the transforms on all the geo just to zero out all this stuff. Just in case it's not, we're going to go through and edit delete the history. So edit, delete by type history. And then we're going to smooth all of the edges. So we'll go to unlock normals, and then soften edge. And it'll look like this, and that's totally fine. We may need to make some modifications to those edges depending on how the bake looks, but we can cross that bridge when we come to it. So now I'm going to go ahead and select all of my geo, all my low poly geo. Everything is named appropriately. And then I'm just going to go ahead and export it. And then all my high poly geo is already exported. But I'll show you what that process looks like. So we just go ahead and select all of it. Shift H to show it. And I'm not doing anything to it. It just is as it was exported out of Fusion. And we'll go to File, Export Selection, Knife High. And then let's head over to Painter. File, New. Select, knife low, we'll hit OK. Oh, one other thing, we didn't do any material work, so it's unlikely that you would see something different, but just in case, on your low poly, it's important to have everything sitting on one material. So this is the hyper shade here. I'll go ahead and just delete unused nodes. So everything right now is all on the Lambert. And if I just want to double check, I can select everything and assign it. It doesn't really matter what you can create a new one if you want. I don't think you can rename Lambert 1. It's like a reserved material. But if I wanted to have the name be different than Lambert on the material, and I didn't want to rename it in Painter, which is very simple to do, that's just really important. You want to make sure that all of your geo, if you want it on one texture sheet in Painter, you just make sure it's sitting on one material. All right, so back to Painter. So that's why when I come over to texture set list, I only have one thing there, and I can come over, double click that, and call this, Spyderco, whatever. All right, and that'll be important when we export the textures, which you may want to do. And now I'm going to go ahead and set up my bake here. So I'll set this to 2048, and we'll go ahead and grab that high poly. So there's our knife high. And I'm just going to scroll down, and we'll set the anti-aliasing to 2x2 and the match to by mesh name. What this means is where we've got our high-low pairs in Maya, it's going to pay attention to that. And the impact of that is going to be, we're not going to see the clip baked onto the side of the thing over here, or one side baked onto the other, or the blade baked onto the handles or whatever. Everything will be isolated and just sort of paying attention to its own high poly, but everything will cast ambient occlusion on everything else. So that's kind of what you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and hit bake mesh maps. Actually, I think I need to hit it down here. Make sure it didn't lose my settings. Looks like it did. So we'll go back to knife high. Match. Oh, we forgot to set up our material IDs on high poly. We can hop back to that in just a second. By mesh name, I just want to make sure that this is all going to bake cleanly. So a little funky back there. Oh, and it looks kind of low res. I might have, yeah, let me set this back to 2048. There we go, that looks better. So you can see, even though there isn't anything in the low poly supporting that inset screw thing there, or these little pieces there, it looks fine. It's lighting really nicely. If I had built it in, it would probably look a little bit better. But, you know, if we're looking at it from back here, I don't think it's ever going to be something that would be that big of an issue. But we do have this little situation back there, and I've got a solution for that and an explanation about why it's happening. But before we jump into that, I just want to kind of confirm that everything over here looks okay. That's a little rough as well. We might be able to adjust that. This is called scalloping, and it's common when you have curved edges. You can see that sort of like swooping thing going on there. And it has to do with how the geometry, the low poly geometry, is looking at the high poly geo, specifically like what angle it's looking at. And I've got a little demo that I kind of want to show you that will explain sort of what's going on there, and one of the things that you can do to potentially reduce it, maybe not totally eliminate it, but you can certainly help a little bit. But overall, I think this looks pretty good. We're getting some strange stuff here, which is potentially a result of the high poly geo just having a lot of triangles in it. That can definitely have an impact there. But there's one simple fix, you can see it there as well, that we can try in Maya. This will be a low poly oriented thing. So let's kind of just come over here and take a look at this. I'll just grab a screen grab of it. So real quick, we'll just head over to Maya. And I'm going to go to the UV editor. This is the low poly now. And I'm going to grab all of the edges and go to select texture borders. So you can see it selected all the texture borders, and that's what it looks like on the geo itself. And with the texture borders selected, I'm going to go to mesh display, harden edge. And what you can see is all of a sudden the knife looks a lot cleaner. And that has a lot to do with just the texture borders being all in places where the geo was being smoothed in a little bit of an awkward way. But let's go ahead and export this now. Just overwriting my knife low file. And then we'll hop back into Painter. Project configuration. We'll re-import it. Okay. You can see it looks a little weird. So we're going to need to rebake all of our mesh maps. So let's do that very quickly. All right, so here's a side-by-side. This is the one with the hardened texture borders. And this is the one with the soft borders, where they're all, everything is soft. So you can see we're still getting that effect, but it's significantly reduced. It's probably 50% as intense in some places and a lot less intense, almost completely eliminated in other areas. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and talk about exactly what hardening the texture borders does and why it has such an impact on the bake.